I go to Uganda a whole lot. Every 60 days I'm there, and the first time I got to Uganda, I went into one of these little villages, and so there's kids playing, and as we got in the Jeep to leave, I was waving to them, right, as we were going, and there's 3 kids running after the Jeep, and so I wave a little faster. Now there's like 5 kids, so I get like both hands going. Now there's like 30 kids, so I'm like, and I lean over to the driver, I say, what's the deal? And in America, this means hi. In Uganda, this means follow me. Isn't that great? That's my problem with Jesus. I've been waving to him. He says, Bob, follow me, right? And I go, hi. And we just get our signals crossed, right? We just get it. I was at a church and there was somebody signing, and I don't know much about sign language. I know this means Jesus and this means the sun's moving, but I don't know. But during one of the whoa, whoa, whoa sections of the song, the girl she started doing this. And I said, what does that mean? And she says, it means awesome. Isn't that great? So next time you meet somebody and they say how you doing? Say awesome. Are you awesome? No, don't do that. You'll need a lawyer. But we get our signals right. We all want to lead strong, but we end up getting our signals wrong from time to time. That's my problem. As a lawyer, I'm terrific at memorizing stuff. And so in this idea of leadership and the kind of leadership that Jesus demonstrated was so magnetic to me. And so I started memorizing all this stuff about Jesus. Because I'm great at it. I memorized his mom's name and this wedding he went to, and I could tell you how many boats were in the lake, right? And if I didn't know, I'd make it up. I'm a lawyer. So I memorized all this stuff, and I went to all these Bible studies, and I memorized more stuff. And I realized, wouldn't that be creepy if I knew where, your mom's name? You'd be like, dude, we don't hang out, right? Or if some wedding you were at last Saturday, wouldn't you want to get a restraining order? That's what stalkers do. They find out all this information, all these facts. But I realized I was stalking Jesus. Right? And I was creeping both of us out. And what I decided to do is that I wasn't just going to stalk him anymore. And in a position of leadership, I thought, I just want to learn from the greatest leader of all time how to lead. If you have Bibles, you can flip to it. If not, I'm going to read to you from 1 John 3:16. It's a couple verses, and it ends like this. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. And we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions, sees a brother or sister in need, and has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Now listen up. Dear children, let us not love with words and speech, but with actions and truth. Not with words and speech. I get paid all this dough as a lawyer to say all the right stuff. And in leadership, you guys get all this pressure and the performances to say all the right stuff. And then Paul from a prison cell is saying, do the right stuff. And we don't do stuff so Jesus will think we're swell. He's nuts about you. Your picture's in his wallet. We do stuff so we'll know the answer to these 2 questions. Who are you? And what do you want? If you get the answer to those 2 questions, you're going to lead well. But I just want to agree with Jesus. I read this stuff and I just want to agree. Matthew 5, love your enemies so you can be perfect, like your Father in heaven is perfect. You want to lead really well, those of you where faith is a big deal, every time somebody asks, how are you doing? Say to yourself, don't say it out loud, they'll think you're stuck up. Say, I'm trying to be perfect, like my Father in heaven's perfect. It'll change your world. I'm trying to be awesome. I want to move from just agreeing with Jesus to doing stuff. Because it was always a lawyer who was trying to set up Jesus, right? He said, what's the big commandment? And it was love God with all your heart and mind and love your neighbor. And so I've got a little yellow stickum on my bathroom mirror in San Diego, and it says 3 things. It says, love God, love people, and do stuff. You want to rock your businesses and the faith communities you're in your neighborhood? Just do stuff. This guy took a knee and asked Lindsay Goff if he could marry her. And I told Lindsay, ever since she was bigger than a trout, I've been telling her that someday some guy's gonna wanna marry you, and if I like that guy, he and I will build a chapel for you together. And if I don't like the guy, we'll just never get around to it. But this guy took a knee, and for the last 2.5 months, we've been building this chapel together. And to give away, you know why he did it? I don't want a son-in-law. And you don't want employees. I want a friend. And you know what? When I did stuff, I got one. And he's terrific. The more times I just do stuff, things happen. But we gotta figure out what's the right stuff to do. You guys are able to do so many things. The real question is this: what were you made to do? And do a lot of that. You guys could put a shuttlecraft together in here if we started passing out the parts, but you're able to because you're so high functioning. But what I'm trying to do is tease out, what is it that Jesus made me to do? Then if I do a bunch of that, then I'll be a leader. Ephesians 4, Paul's in a jail cell. He says to his friends, live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Now, don't you live his, and don't you live hers. It'll come off like this bad Elvis impression. Live a life worthy of the calling you've received. And when we do that stuff, it changes everything, because some of us believe this lie, and some of the people that work for us, that we're leading, believe this lie that we're our biggest mistake. Like somehow we are defined by who we used to be, right? You guys can keep your iPhones. You know, this is a real camera. This is like a, no, okay. All right, here, smile. Remember these things? Like the film costs, it's like $30 a shot now. So you got a paper route. But remember these things, how they develop over time? Like if you want to figure out what is it that you were made to be as a leader in your community, all the places God's put you right now, let it develop over time. I want to rush it. I want to I want to just do it, and you end up blowing it when if you try to rush it, but just let it develop over time. And that's that thing. Remember, we see through a mirror dimly, but then face to face. And it's going to come into focus for us, but it's going to take a little time. Sometimes, as people are developing around us, we think in leadership what we need to do is give them all these pointers. I live up this place in Canada, and it is a long way. It's like it's 150 miles one way to the grocery store. Isn't that terrific? I throw milk away just so I can get some more. I've got this old Beaver seaplane. I'm like, honey, we're out of milk. You want to go? So I have this old Beaver seaplane. They're built in the 40s. You know what a beaver is? They take off and land on the water. They're like, Bill, you'd know. They're like all guy. If they could make them out of beef jerky, they would. So I've got this old plane, and my son was trying to learn how to fly. Actually, I looked at his course schedule as a senior in high school, and he had ball monitor and teacher's pad. And I'm like, do you take any classes? So I had him go to the airport and get his pilot's license his senior year, noon on each day. Well, he has had his eye on Dad's Beaver for 10 years now. And there's this little lake up in the mountains near us. We've been looking at it, and it looks like 2 glasses of water end to end from the air. But we've been thinking, I wonder if we could land there. And last year we decided, let's go do it. So I'm flying the plane in. A beaver it's all hydraulics, and you pump in the flaps, and they come out like these dining room tables. And we turned in. This lake is at the bottom of a 4,000-foot canyon, and there's no way out. So when you come in, Adam's like, no. I'm like, yes. So we're flying in, and your wings got it closed, and then you have to push way forward and make this big turn and pull out all the flaps and landed. So we landed the plane, and we were chest bumping yeah, we landed it, right? And then I turned to Adam, and I said, all right, Adam, you take us out of here. And he's like, no! And so you remember in Back to the Future, how fast does that DeLorean have to be going before it takes off? 88, and you guys can't memorize scripture verses? I'm just saying. Just saying. So A beaver has to be going 52 before it'll take off. So I got out of the left seat where all the controls were and got in the right seat. And Adam got in there like a big dog and threw in all the throttle. And I'm kind of watching the speedometer like 30, 40, 50. You go faster than 52, you run out of lake and hit the trees. It's like 60, and I'm thinking, pull up. But I didn't say anything. And he pulled up, and we just cleared these trees. And I'm like, yeah, like eyes on the road, but yeah. Then I turned to him, and he said, all right, Adam, you take us back in and land us on the lake. And he was like, no! And I was thinking, no! So he came in, and he came in way too close to the cliff. We were like from here to the light. But I didn't say anything. And then he was coming in kind of hot. And he made this turn at the end of the canyon. If it would have hit YouTube, it would have gone viral. And so I'm like, I had no idea a plane could do that. And he pushed forward, but not enough. And he was 50 feet off the water when we passed where I stopped. And the trees were getting pretty big. But I didn't say anything. And I don't know how he did it, but he got it on the lake. And this 19-year-old that flew into that canyon landed 38. And I was 140, right? But I learned something about leadership and what it means to be a father who loves a son. And you know the only 3 words I was thinking the whole time? Land the plane. Right? That's you guys. That's the leadership everybody's been like, I get to share the stage with. They're telling you, go home at your families and your business places and say, just lead them. Just say, land the plane. You know how to do this stuff. Live into the life worthy of the calling you've received. And the problem is we get afraid. It's what Bill was talking about at the beginning. And like that's why Scripture just threw out it, not only in Joshua that we were talking about this morning, but Jeremiah. They said, you're the guy. And he says, I'm not the guy. And he said, be not afraid. And Abram, before a big battle, he said, I'm your shield and your great reward. Be not afraid. And Jesus to 3 dudes in a rowboat, he said, it is I. Be not afraid. If we weren't afraid in leadership, we could live into the life worthy of the calling, the high calling of leadership that most of you have received. But we fake it. Have you guys been to Madame Tussauds, that wax museum? They have a bunch of wax people, Abraham Lincoln, all kinds of people. And we were in D.C., and I had this senator coat with my whiskers and all that. I actually kind of looked like a senator. So I said to the kids, you want to go to the wax museum? And because they're my kids, they're like, yeah! So we went down below, and I said, you guys watch this? And I struck up a pose between the 3rd and 4th wax guy. And like, and the kids are like, Dad, would you at your age? And I'm like, I am. So what I wasn't counting on is these 2 little old ladies. They come walking around the corner. They were older than dirt. And they walked up to me. They pulled my whisker. They said he looked so real. But I had to hold the pose, right? Because I knew I'm a lawyer. If I moved, they'd have a stroke and own my house. And you know what I realized about myself? I'm a poser. That's why I'm a pretty good lawyer. But some of you are posing too. You're posing, and I wish I could do this Jedi thing and say, you just don't have to anymore. Like we're just don't be afraid. Just be you. Live a life worthy of the calling you've received. And I know this, I've been called to do justice. The first thing I ever fell in love with was this woman named Maria Goff. She wasn't named Maria Goff at the time, but she walked into the room and I'm like, yes, you will be mine. Right? She's only been in the room for 2 minutes and I'm picking out names for our kids. Guys, don't tell them if you're doing that. But she wasn't interested in me at all. Right? Can I show you what I look like on the day I met Sweet Maria? Do you have that picture? That! Oh my God! Would you let your daughter date that? Oh my God! It's like a happy Freddy Krueger. But you know what was terrific? Maria saw who I was becoming. You want to live into a life worthy of the calling you've received in leadership? See people for who they're becoming, not who they were, we're hanging these screw-ups on our refrigerator like they're still us. This is old us. We're still developing, and so are the people who are following you. But like that idea that Maria just saw, that there was something through all that acne and hair, like there was something more. And Jesus did the same thing to Peter, right? After the whole rooster thing was going off, he didn't say, Peter, you're such a wuss. What did he say? Peter, you're a rock. And you know why? He wasn't blowing sunshine at him. He saw who he was becoming. We do that in leadership. We'll blow people's doors off because they'll say like, really? You see, and it's not this like admiration and all that. Just it's like sincere. It's looking them in the eye. In the South, they always say it's good to see you. I love that. In the West, we always say it's nice to meet you. They say it's good to see you. I know they're just covering their tracks. They don't know if they already met you. So, right? But that's next time you greet somebody, tell them it's good to see you. Just as another prompt, another reminder. I want to see people for who they're becoming, just the way Maria saw me. But I got questions about this whole thing of leadership. Hey, and you do too. And the whole thing about how do I integrate my faith? There's a key on a typewriter. It's called an interrobang. Have you ever heard it? Do you have a picture of that? An interrobang is that it's a question mark and an exclamation point. Isn't that terrific? Like if somebody asked me, what's it like to lead in this fashion we're talking about? I'd say it's an interrobang. I got questions, but I want to put the exclamation point after the right stuff, right? I want to be awesome. Love your enemies so you can be perfect. You can be awesome like your Father in heaven is. Justice has been my calling. And so I've been in Uganda for quite a while doing things to do with justice. And one of the practices that they have in Uganda and many countries in Africa is child sacrifice. It's just a horrible thing, but the belief is that the head or blood or private parts of a little kid have these magical powers. 863 kids this last year have gone missing. And the belief is that the ones that are doing it are the witch doctors. And everybody believes they have all the power, but they don't. They're punks. Jesus has all the power. But the problem is this, there's always a victim, but they're always dead until this year. And there's a little boy, and we'll just say his name is Charlie. And he got abducted by a guy named Kabi. Do you have Kabi's picture? Kabi is the most evil man I've ever met. Do you have his picture? That's Kabi. I remember texting a friend, Dawn, first time I was in a room with Kabi, and I said, I'm looking into the eyes of pure evil. And Kabi abducted this little boy, took him into the bush and cut off these private parts and left him for dead. But guess what? This little kid didn't die. And for the first time, we had a bad guy and we had a survivor, and this little 8-year-old kid. We took the case to trial, and Kabi got the first conviction in Uganda's history, and it was from a 4-foot-tall kid. Let me introduce you to the kid that changed everything. This is Charlie. Isn't that crazy? I don't know what it's going to be like when we get to heaven, but don't you hope Jesus just touches you on the nose and say, you rascal. Like you are who I made you to be. And I don't know what about heavenly garments, but I hope we're wearing Spider-Man uniforms. Well, there's a doctor, and he's trying to learn how to fly a beaver seaplane. And he hears the person teaching him, he hears all about Charlie. And he lands the plane. And he calls me up at home and says, my name's Randy. I've heard about this little boy, and I can fix him. And I said, buddy, you didn't hear what got cut off. You can't fix that. And he said, I'm the chief of surgery at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. I can fix him. And I said, what? So I drive up to LA, and he gets out a piece of paper and he starts drawing. And I'm like, you can do that? Like that was way too much information. He was gonna take some leg and some arm, and I'm like, it works? So I said, what would that cost? And he said, it'd be staggering, but I'll do it for nothing. Evidence of Jesus, right? So I said, I can afford nothing. So Mending Kids writes a check for $50,000, and I fly to Uganda to get the 4-footer. And my first stop is to go to court and become his legal guardian. This kid has never seen an airplane. We fly to London, and as we're getting off the plane, he says, "Father, could we just walk the rest of the way?" I'm like, "Oh, buddy, sorry." Now, do you guys play pranks where you're from? I hope overseas, if you haven't learned this, learn it. We play pranks. There's this guy, Doug, that he's like in Wikipedia under low-hanging fruit. There's Doug's picture right there. And Doug made the mistake. We've been buddies since junior high. He made the mistake of telling me where he was spending his 15-year wedding anniversary. Big mistake. So he got the presidential suite at this hotel. So I took Suite Maria and we checked in as them. And we got in the elevator and up we went. And we called the room service. We got creme brulee and lobster. There was some dessert that was on fire, so we had 2. We danced, right? And when it was all over, we tidied up and we split. And the whole idea was that Doug would get there, have this terrific evening. And when he checked out, he got a $400 bill. And he's like, "Bob!" Now, he's been trying to get back at me, but he can't. I'm a lawyer. So I get this call, and there's somebody with a really convincing Ugandan accent on it, and it was Doug, right? And this fellow said, "Hi, I'm the ambassador from Uganda, and I've heard about the stuff that you're doing in Uganda, and I'd like to know if you'll be counsel for the Republic of Uganda." And so I covered the phone and said, "Maria, it's Doug." He says he's the ambassador, right? So he wants me to be the lawyer for Uganda. So I said, "Well, awesome. When do I start?" So he said, "I'm leaving for Uganda. I'll call you in 2 months when I get back." 2 months later, the phone rings. And I hadn't even thought about Doug's stupid prank. And it was Doug again. He says, "This is the ambassador, and you need to meet me in New York on Saturday." So I said, yes. So now I'm getting off the plane at JFK. And I thought there'd be a sign that said "Gotcha" or "Lobsters on me." And at the bottom of the ramp are all these members of Uganda's cabinet. And this guy ran up to me and he says, "I'm the ambassador." I said, "Of course you are." And he introduced me as Uganda's new consul. And I said, no, you said counsel, like lawyer. He said, no, I said consul, like diplomat. Are you getting the sense of Jesus in the air? I'm like, yes. So you guys, I am the consul for Uganda. I'm not kidding. If you want to lead strong in your communities, say yes. And when it just seems crazy, just say yes. But you don't have to say yes to everything. Your world is as crowded as mine. How many of you have the pattern is full, you couldn't squeeze one more thing in? If you're not raising your hand, it's called denial. So, you know one thing I do? Every single Thursday, I quit something. You can go, half of you are afraid you're going to lose your jobs, and the other half of you are afraid you're going to keep them. What? What if you just offload one thing, knowing that in your leadership, if you make some margin, Jesus will chuck terrific things in there. And so every single Thursday, ladies, if you're in a marriage and it's tough, you got to hang in there. But if you're just dating the guy, break up with him. And when he asks why, I say, Thursday, I quit you. See ya. Well, I open up my inbox and there's an email in there and it says White House on it. And I'm thinking, Doug, right? The message is really short. It just says, "We'd like to meet Charlie." You guys, I'm not kidding. This kid that 2 days before is standing in the bush in Congo is now standing in the Oval Office. Why does God do that? You know why? He wants to blow your minds. He wants to, remember that verse in Corinthians, not many of you are wise, not many of you are influential, not many of you are of noble birth, but he takes the foolish things, the things that are not, to displace the things that are. And here's the punchline: so no one will boast. But if we boast about the Lord. So I took this little kid from the Oval Office to Disneyland, right? Because any kid that's getting that operation the next day needs to go to the Happy happiest place on earth. You're going to feel a little pinch. And then the next morning, we got him in his scrubs, and I gave Charlie a kiss on the forehead, and I said, Charlie, be not afraid. Sound familiar? That's us as leaders. And then Randy hooked him up. But let me ask you this. The way my world works, there's terrific kids like Charlie, and then there's horrible people, people that are my enemies, like Cobby. And so I called the warden of Lizera Maximum Security Prison, and I asked, could I visit with Cobby? And Lizera was built for 200 death row inmates. There's 3,000 men there. There's no windows. And Cobby came into the room, and he took a knee, and he started talking about how bad he felt about what he'd done to Charlie. And I was thinking, like you just feel bad you got caught. And then he started talking about witchcraft and where it had taken him in his life. And then his words, not mine, he said, I know I'm going to die in this place. You know what I need? Forgiveness. And I felt like I was talking to a criminal hanging on a cross next to Jesus. You know, the one that Jesus said, you get paradise. And you know what, friends? I didn't want Cobby to go because he hurt my friend. But isn't it great that God's ability to forgive us isn't limited by our ability to get it? And Cobby comes to Christ. I'm like, really? Like he gets it too? A killer? Like I got an interrobang about that. But you know what? Cobby's not like me. I want to read scripture, Matthew 5. Love your enemies so you can be perfect, so you can be awesome. I want to just agree, like you ought to love your enemies. I don't want to love mine. I don't want to love Cobby. But Cobby reads scripture. I meet with him every 60 days. And he reads this stuff and he actually wants to do it. And so we asked the warden a couple trips ago, could Cobby present the gospel message to all 3,000 death row inmates? I was thinking, there's no way he's going to say yes. And then Jesus shows up again and he says yes. And so Cobby and I held hands in Lizera just before the summer. And Cobby presented the gospel of Christ to 3,000 dying men. And you know what? He screwed it up. I was like, what? The only thing he got right was Jesus. You want to get stuff right in your leadership? Just get the exclamation point after the right stuff. And then when he was done, all these prisoners started coming at us, and Cobby grabs a water bottle and he starts baptizing. I'm like, no, you can't do that. We're like, maybe, oh, shoot. And then Cobby takes my hand and said, Bob, I know I'm going to die in here because of you, but I want you to know that I forgive you. I'm like, you can't forgive me, you're the bad guy. But Cobby's not like some of us. He knows that if I'm his enemy, he can't be awesome. He can't be perfect like his Father in heaven is. Man, that's us, you guys. That's what we want in leadership. And so as you launch, as we wrap up this short time that I've got, think of those things. Think what God has done. Land the plane. Be awesome. Be perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect. Don't just agree with Jesus. There's a great verse in Romans, and I'll end it with this. It's Romans 8. It says, neither life nor death, neither angels nor demons, neither present nor future, nor any power, neither heights nor depths, nor anything will ever, like a Taylor Swift song, ever separate us from the love of God. And it won't separate me, it won't separate Cobby, and it won't separate you. God bless you guys.